"Your big body drives me wild," the Virgin CEO declared to the girl they called Too Fat to Marry. She never expected a man like him, a billionaire genius, calm, perfect, and untouched, to look at her that way. She spent her whole life being laughed at for her size, until the world's most powerful man said the one thing no one else dared to say: that she was beautiful. But when his words go viral, the world turns cruel fast. Headlines twist their story, his company's in chaos, and she's suddenly accused of trapping him for fame. He risks everything to defend her, but she vanishes before he can tell her the truth burning inside him. Now, the world's loneliest man will stop at nothing to find the woman who taught him what real love feels like. But when fame, faith, and fear collide, can love survive the weight of the world's judgment? Or will one cruel lie destroy the only man who ever saw her worth? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The Dallas Tech Philanthropy Gala glittered beneath crystal chandeliers, filling the grand ballroom of the Rosewood Hotel with the soft murmur of conversations and the gentle clink of champagne glasses. Leo Matthews stood near a marble pillar, his navy polo and tailored blazer a deliberate choice to set him apart from the sea of tuxedos. His fingers tightened around his untouched glass of sparkling water as another reporter approached. "Mr. Matthews?" The young woman thrust her recorder forward. "People magazine recently named you Most Eligible Bachelor. Any plans to change that status?" Leo's expression remained neutral, though a muscle twitched in his jaw. "I'm here to discuss Mathera's initiative for accessible mental health technology. That's what matters tonight." Across the room, Nia Johnson smoothed her hands over her blush-pink dress for the 100th time. The fabric embraced her curves beautifully, but her confidence wavered as she caught whispers and sideways glances from the crowd. She hadn't planned to be here. Her friend Sarah was supposed to give the keynote speech, but a family emergency had left Nia holding the note cards just hours before. "You've got this," she whispered to herself, a habit from her podcasting days. "God doesn't make mistakes, and he put you here tonight for a reason." The event photographer weaved through the crowd, camera flashing. Nia tried to make herself smaller, an impossible task at her size, as she navigated toward the podium for sound check. That's when it happened. A waiter brushed past too closely, throwing her off balance. Her heel caught in the hem of her dress, and the champagne glass she'd been holding for appearances went flying. Time seemed to slow as the golden liquid arced through the air. Nia watched in horror as it splashed across the front of a navy polo shirt worn by none other than Leo Matthews himself. The silence lasted only a heartbeat before the laughter started. Phones appeared like fireflies, catching the moment from every angle. Nia's cheeks burned as she heard the murmurs, "That's the speaker." Size 20 if she's a day. Poor Leo, ambushed by the fat girl. Shame crashed over her like a wave, familiar as an old enemy. But before she could stammer out an apology, Leo Matthews did something unexpected. He reached out, offering his hand to steady her. "You don't need to apologize for existing," he said quietly, his deep brown eyes meeting hers with startling intensity. The kindness in his voice nearly undid her. Nia managed a shaky nod before retreating to the ladies' room, where she spent 10 minutes breathing deeply and reminding herself that her worth wasn't determined by cruel whispers or camera flashes. Later that night, curled up in her apartment with her cat, Mr. Darcy, Nia made the mistake of checking social media. The photos had already gone viral. The headlines screamed across her screen, "Virgin CEO's champagne shower," "Plus-size speaker makes splash at tech gala," "The Virgin and the Vixen, Dallas's newest scandal." The comments were worse. Nia scrolled through them with morbid fascination, each one a tiny knife. How did they even let her in? Bet she did it on purpose for attention. Two freaks, they should date. Her phone pinged with an email notification, and Nia almost ignored it, assuming it was another news alert. But the sender caught her eye. Mathera PR Department. With trembling fingers, she opened it. Dear Ms. Johnson, on behalf of Leo Matthews, I'm reaching out regarding tonight's events. Mr. Matthews would like to speak with you personally. If you're willing, please provide a contact number where he can reach you directly. Best regards, James Porter, Head of Public Relations, Mathera, Inc. Nia stared at the screen, her heart pounding. Mr. Darcy nudged her hand, purring loudly, as if encouraging her to reply. After several minutes of internal debate, she hit respond and typed in her number. What did Leo Matthews want to say to her? Was this damage control? An attempt to prevent her from using the incident for publicity? The man was notorious for his privacy. She'd heard the rumors about his strict no-dating policy, his apparent aversion to relationships. The media had dubbed him the Virgin CEO years ago, and though he never confirmed or denied it, the nickname stuck. But those eyes of his, when he'd looked at her in the ballroom, there had been no judgment, no disgust, just understanding. Like he knew what it felt like to be the subject of public ridicule, to have your most private matters turned into entertainment for the masses. Her phone buzzed again. Another social media notification. This time, someone had dug up photos from her college days before she'd found her confidence, before she'd built her speaking career. The cruel comments multiplied like poison ivy. Nia turned off her phone, set it face down on the coffee table, and curled deeper into her oversized armchair. Mr. Darcy settled in her lap, his warmth a comfort against the chill of public humiliation. "Well, Lord," she whispered, stroking her cat's fur, "you certainly have a sense of humor. I asked for a sign about whether to expand my speaking platform, and you had me dump champagne on one of the most powerful men in Texas." She glanced at her silent phone, wondering what tomorrow would bring. One thing was certain. This wasn't how she'd planned to make headlines at the Dallas Tech Philanthropy Gala. The clock on her wall ticked steadily toward midnight, and Nia found herself remembering Leo's words. "You don't need to apologize for existing." Such a simple phrase, but it had cut straight to the core of her deepest wounds, the lifetime of being told to make herself smaller, to take up less space, to apologize for her very presence in the world. Tomorrow, she would have to face the fallout. Tomorrow, she would discover what Leo Matthews wanted to discuss. But tonight, she would hold on to those words like a shield against the darkness, a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected moments could bring the most profound truths. Sunlight streamed through Nia's bedroom window, highlighting the tissues scattered across her nightstand. Her eyes felt swollen and tender from crying herself to sleep. Mr. Darcy stretched lazily at the foot of her bed, seemingly unconcerned with his owner's public humiliation. "Time to be professional," Nia muttered, dragging herself to the bathroom. The mirror reflected exactly what she expected: puffy eyes and blotchy cheeks. She splashed cold water on her face and began her morning routine, determined to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Her podcast studio, really just a converted walk-in closet, lined with sound-dampening foam, waited for her daily recording. Love Your Light with Nia Johnson had grown from 100 listeners to over 50,000 in just 2 years. The irony of recording a self-love episode after last night's disaster wasn't lost on her. Nia adjusted her microphone and pulled up her outline for today's episode. Finding worth beyond validation. She almost laughed at the timing. "Good morning, beautiful souls," she began, her voice warm despite her exhaustion. "Today we're talking about something that hits close to home. Finding your worth when the world seems determined to define it for you." She shared her usual mix of scripture, psychology, and personal anecdotes, carefully avoiding any mention of champagne or tech galas. 40 minutes into the recording, just as she was wrapping up, her producer's face appeared in the window of her studio door, frantically waving. "We've got a caller on the line," he mouthed, pointing urgently at her headphones. Nia frowned. She didn't take live calls during recording sessions. But before she could object, a deep, measured voice filled her headphones. "Ms. Johnson, this is Leo Matthews." Her heart stopped, then started again at double speed. "Mr. Matthews," she managed, her professional voice only slightly shaky. "This is unexpected. I hope I'm not interrupting." His voice was even calmer in her ears than it had been at the gala. "I've been listening to your podcast this morning. Your perspective on internal validation versus external approval is particularly relevant to a project I'm developing." Nia's producer gave her an enthusiastic thumbs up through the window. She took a deep breath. "What kind of project?" "Mathera is launching an artificial intelligence wellness program," Leo explained. "It's designed to combat body dysmorphia and negative self-image patterns. We're using adaptive learning algorithms to create personalized intervention strategies, but we need someone who understands the human element. Someone who can speak to the emotional reality of these struggles." He paused, then added quietly, "Someone who doesn't pretend it's easy." Nia's mind raced. This was either an incredible opportunity or an elaborate form of damage control. "And you're calling me because I'd like you to consider coming on as a consultant." His tone remained steady, but there was something else there. Earnestness, perhaps. "Would you be willing to meet and discuss it further?" Through the studio window, her producer was practically dancing with excitement. Nia closed her eyes, considering her options. Her rational mind screamed that this was a pity offer, damage control from a PR nightmare. But something in Leo's voice suggested otherwise. "When and where?" "This afternoon at 2:00, if you're available. Mathera headquarters." Nia glanced at her calendar, already knowing she'd move heaven and earth to make it work. "I'll be there." "Thank you, Ms. Johnson." There was a pause. Then, "And thank you for your honesty on air today. It's refreshing." The line went dead. Nia stared at her microphone, trying to process what had just happened. Her producer burst into the studio, practically vibrating with excitement. "Do you know what this could mean? Mathera is worth billions. They're revolutionizing the wellness industry. This is huge!" "Or it's damage control," Nia said quietly. But her heart wasn't in the cynicism. She kept hearing Leo's voice. Someone who doesn't pretend it's easy. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of outfit changes and anxiety. She finally settled on a professional but comfortable emerald green wrap dress that made her feel confident. At 1:45, her rideshare pulled up to Mathera's headquarters, a towering structure of glass and steel that seemed to touch the Dallas sky. The lobby was a testament to minimalist design, all clean lines and natural light. A receptionist with perfect posture directed her to the executive elevator, which whisked her to the 42nd floor in complete silence. The doors opened directly into what appeared to be Leo Matthews' personal office, a vast space with floor-to-ceiling windows and surprisingly comfortable-looking furniture. Leo himself stood by one of the windows, wearing jeans and that same navy polo shirt that had caught the champagne the night before. The casual attire did nothing to hide his athletic build. If anything, it emphasized it. His arms, particularly, caught her attention in a way that made her nervous for entirely new reasons. "Ms. Johnson," he said, turning to greet her. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for the invitation," she replied, proud of how steady her voice sounded. "Though I have to admit I'm curious about the timing." He gestured to a seating area, 2 comfortable armchairs arranged for conversation rather than confrontation. Would you like some water, coffee, tea? Water would be fine. Leo pressed something on his desk, and moments later a young assistant appeared with 2 glasses of water, then disappeared just as quietly. About the timing, he said, settling into one of the chairs. I've actually been following your work for several months. Your podcast's approach to mental wellness aligns with what we're trying to achieve with our AI program. Last night's incident simply provided an opportunity to reach out. Naya took a sip of water, studying him over the rim of her glass. His posture was relaxed, but alert. His attention focused entirely on her. It was slightly unnerving. Tell me about the program, she said. For the next hour, Leo outlined Mathera's vision, an AI system that could provide 24/7 support for people struggling with body image issues, using advanced algorithms to identify negative thought patterns and offer personalized intervention strategies. But more than the technical details, Nia found herself drawn to the passion in his voice when he spoke about the potential impact. The technology is impressive, she said finally. But why me? There are plenty of more qualified experts in this field. Leo's expression softened slightly. Because you don't pretend, he said simply. You're honest about the struggle, about the daily battle with self-worth, about how faith and healing aren't linear processes. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Most experts speak from a position of having overcome these issues. You speak from a place of walking through them. The honesty in his assessment caught her off guard. She found herself sharing more than she'd intended, about growing up as the big girl, about losing friends over her size, about finding her voice through her faith. Leo listened with an intensity that made her feel both seen and exposed. He asked thoughtful questions, took notes, and never once glanced at his phone or the door. For someone the media painted as cold and removed, he had an almost unnerving ability to focus completely on the person in front of him. As their meeting drew to a close, Leo stood and walked to his desk. I'll have the contract sent to you this evening for review, he said, then hesitated. Miss Johnson. Nia. She corrected automatically. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Nia, I want you to know that this offer isn't about last night. Your work has value beyond any social media circus. The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight. Thank you, Mr. Matthews. Leo, he corrected, and this time the smile reached his eyes. True to his word, the contract arrived in her email that evening. The terms were more than generous. They were life-changing. Nia sat at her kitchen table, staring at the figures on her screen while Mr. Darcy wound around her ankles. The contract represented everything she'd dreamed of. A chance to make real change, to reach people who needed help, to turn her own struggles into something meaningful. But it also meant working closely with Leo Matthews, a man who seemed to see right through her carefully constructed walls. She reached down to scratch Mr. Darcy's ears, considering her options. Well, Lord, she whispered, you certainly work in mysterious ways. Nia smoothed her navy dress for the 100th time as she walked through Mathera's pristine glass doors. Despite choosing her most professional outfit, she felt conspicuous among the sea of slim figures in designer wear who populated the lobby. A young receptionist glanced up, her perfectly shaped eyebrows rising slightly. Ms. Johnson, Mr. Matthews is expecting you. 15th floor. The elevator ride felt endless. Each ping of passing floors echoed her heartbeat. When the doors finally opened, she stepped into a modern workspace, filled with standing desks and collaboration pods. Conversations hushed as she passed, replaced by whispers and sidelong glances. Did you hear? She's the one from the gala. I can't believe he hired her. What was he thinking? Nia lifted her chin higher, channeling the confidence she preached about in her podcast. A tall woman in a crisp white suit approached, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. "I'm Sarah Chen, Leo's executive assistant. This way, please." The morning strategy meeting was already in progress when Sarah ushered her in. 12 impeccably dressed executives sat around a glass conference table, all turning to stare as she entered. Leo stood at the head of the table, his navy polo and blazer combination somehow making him look both casual and commanding. "Ms. Johnson, welcome," he said, his deep voice cutting through the uncomfortable silence. "Please, join us. We were just discussing the emotional intelligence parameters for the AI system." A man in an expensive charcoal suit cleared his throat. "With all due respect, Mr. Matthews, perhaps we should stick to technical specifications for now. The broader applications can be discussed later." "The broader applications are precisely why Ms. Johnson is here, David," Leo replied firmly. "Her expertise in emotional wellness is critical to this project's success." Nia took the empty seat beside Leo, aware of the skeptical glances being exchanged across the table. But as the meeting progressed, Leo consistently drew her into the conversation, ensuring her voice was heard. When she suggested incorporating faith-based coping mechanisms as an optional feature, he actually smiled, a rare sight that transformed his usually serious face. The morning dissolved into a blur of meetings, each following a similar pattern: initial resistance, Leo's unwavering support, and grudging acceptance of her input. By lunchtime, her head was spinning with technical terms and corporate politics. "Join me in my office?" Leo asked as the last meeting concluded. "We can order lunch and review the morning's progress." His office was a calm oasis of clean lines and natural light. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Dallas, while simple furniture in warm woods created an unexpectedly welcoming atmosphere. "They'll come around," he said quietly as they settled onto the office's small sofa with their salads. "Change makes people uncomfortable." "Speaking from experience?" Nia asked, surprised by her own boldness. Leo's expression softened. "You could say that. Being different, it tends to make others uneasy." "Different how?" He was quiet for a moment, pushing a cherry tomato around his plate. "I've never dated anyone," he admitted finally. "The media finds it entertaining. The Virgin CEO makes for good headlines. But the truth is, I've always feared being loved for my money rather than my heart." The vulnerability in his confession caught her off guard. "That must be lonely," she said softly. "Sometimes, but better lonely than used." He glanced at her. "The headlines about me. They're not wrong. I am pure, even if people find it funny." The simple sincerity of his statement touched something deep in Nia's heart. Here was a man who could have anything, or anyone, he wanted, yet he chose to wait for something real. "Would you like to have dinner tonight?" he asked suddenly. "There's a quiet place I know. We could talk more. About the project, of course." "Of course," Nia echoed, her heart doing an unexpected flip. "I'd like that." The restaurant turned out to be a small Italian place, tucked away from the busy streets. Soft lighting from iron chandeliers cast warm shadows across their corner table, and the smell of fresh bread and herbs filled the air. "I came here often when I first started Mathera," Leo explained. "It was quiet enough to work, and Maria, the owner, never tried to network with me." Their conversation flowed easily, moving beyond work to deeper waters. Leo spoke about growing up as an only child, about being called odd and robot by his classmates because he preferred computers to sports. The pain of those memories still showed in his eyes, though he tried to hide it. "Kids can be cruel," Nia said softly. "I know something about that myself." "Tell me." She hesitated, then shared the story she rarely told anyone about Jason Cooper, the youth group leader's son, who had asked her to the Valentine's Day dance their senior year of high school. How he'd waited until everyone was watching, then announced he couldn't possibly take someone too fat to marry to such an important event. "I didn't go back to church for months," she admitted. "It took a long time to separate other people's cruelty from God's love." Leo's hand tightened around his water glass. "He was wrong," he said, his voice carrying an edge she hadn't heard before. "About all of it." The warmth in his eyes made her breath catch. For a moment, the rest of the restaurant seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of them in a pocket of understanding. They lingered over tiramisu, sharing stories about their families, their faith, their dreams for the future. When they finally stepped outside, the evening air was warm and sweet with jasmine from the restaurant's small garden. "Thank you," Leo said quietly, "for sharing your story, for being real. Thank you for listening," Nia replied, "and for defending me today." "Always," he said simply, and something in the way he said it made her heart skip. Standing there under the soft glow of the street lamps, Nia felt something shift between them, something new and fragile and full of possibility. It wasn't just about the project anymore, and they both knew it. The weeks flowed together in a rhythm of meetings, presentations, and quiet moments that felt increasingly precious. Nia found herself looking forward to each morning at Mathra, where the initially frosty atmosphere had begun to thaw under the warmth of her presence. Sarah from accounting started bringing homemade cookies to Nia's Wednesday lunch talks. Mike from IT asked for advice about his daughter's struggle with self-image. Even Victoria, who had once whispered cutting remarks about charity cases, now lingered after meetings to discuss meditation techniques. "It's amazing how you connect with people," Leo observed one afternoon, watching through his office window as a group of employees gathered around Nia in the break room. "You make them feel safe enough to be vulnerable." Nia smiled, touched by the observation. Sometimes people just need permission to be human. The biggest test came during the product demonstration for Mathra's new wellness app. The company's largest presentation space was packed with investors, reporters, and industry analysts. Nia stood backstage, smoothing her pink dress, a flowing creation that made her feel both professional and pretty. Nervous, Leo appeared beside her, his navy polo crisp against dark slacks. "A little," she admitted. "There's a lot riding on this." "Just be yourself," he said softly. "That's more than enough." When Nia took the stage, the studio lights wrapped her in a warm glow. She moved with confidence, demonstrating how the app's AI technology worked alongside human emotional intelligence to create personalized wellness journeys. "The goal isn't to change who you are," she explained, her voice carrying clearly through the room. "It's to help you recognize your inherent worth and build from there." The presentation was going smoothly until the Q&A session. A reporter from Tech Weekly stood up, his expression skeptical. "Ms. Johnson," he said, emphasizing her lack of title, "what exactly qualifies you to guide the development of such sophisticated technology? Your background is in motivational speaking, not artificial intelligence or psychology." Before Nia could respond, Leo was already moving. He crossed the stage in long strides to stand beside her, his presence steady and protective. "Nia Johnson is the heart of this project," he stated, his quiet voice carrying absolute authority. "Her lived experience and emotional intelligence have shaped every aspect of our approach. While we have brilliant technical experts on our team, it's Nia's understanding of human nature that makes this program truly revolutionary." The reporter sat down, properly chastened. Nia felt warmth spread through her chest at Leo's defense, at the way he valued what she brought to the table. After the presentation, Leo suggested they take a walk through the gardens behind headquarters. The space was one of his pet projects, a peaceful oasis of native plants and winding paths where employees could decompress or find inspiration. They walked in comfortable silence, their shoulders occasionally brushing. The late afternoon sun painted everything in gold, and the air was sweet with Texas sage and honeysuckle. "You were magnificent today," Leo said finally, stopping beside a small fountain. "The way you commanded that room, I couldn't take my eyes off you." Nia laughed softly, though her heart was racing. "Even in this pink dress that probably breaks every tech company dress code. Especially in that dress." His voice had dropped lower, more intense. "Your big body drives me wild, Nia, because it means you're real and you're not afraid to live." The world seemed to stop. Nia stared at him, her breath caught somewhere between a laugh and a sob. No one had ever described her body that way, as something desirable rather than problematic, as a symbol of courage rather than shame. Leo stood very still, watching her process his words. The space between them felt charged with possibility, with unspoken feelings and desires neither had dared acknowledge before. Though they didn't kiss, the moment hummed with electricity, with the promise of something profound and life-changing. The spell was broken by the distant sound of a camera shutter. They both turned to see a young intern hurrying away, phone in hand. "I'm so sorry," Leo said, running a hand through his hair. "I should have been more careful about privacy." "It's okay," Nia assured him, though her heart was still racing from his earlier words. "We weren't doing anything wrong." But by the next morning, social media was ablaze. The photo, showing them standing close together in the garden, Leo's expression unusually soft as he looked at Nia, had gone viral. Virgin CEO was trending, along with speculation about their relationship and cruel comments about their apparent mismatch. Nia saw it all over her feed during her morning coffee. There were defenders too, people praising Leo's progressive choice, celebrating their potential relationship as a win for body positivity. But it still felt overwhelming, having their private moment dissected by strangers. Her phone buzzed with a text from Leo. "I meant every word I said yesterday. The rest is just noise." She held the phone to her heart, letting his quiet certainty anchor her against the storm of public opinion. Whatever was growing between them felt too precious, too real to be tainted by outside judgment. The morning's notifications included interview requests from major networks, gossip blogs demanding insider information, and a flood of new followers across all her social media platforms. But the message that mattered most was the simple one from Leo, reminding her that their truth was their own, regardless of how the world tried to spin it. The photo of Leo and Nia in the garden spread like wildfire across social media. By Friday morning, every major news outlet had their own spin on the story. The Dallas Morning News headline screamed, "Body positivity star seduces CEO," while Tech Insider went with, "Charity romance hoax." Each article seemed more sensational than the last. Nia sat at her kitchen table, scrolling through her phone with trembling hands. The words blurred together, but their cruelty cut deep. Comment sections overflowed with speculation about her motives, suggesting she was manipulating Leo for money or publicity. No way a guy like Matthews goes for someone like her unless there's an agenda. One commenter wrote, "It's obviously a PR stunt gone wrong," said another. At Mathra headquarters, the situation was even more tense. Shareholders called emergency meetings, their voices echoing through conference rooms as stock prices took a hit. The board of directors, led by Harrison Wells, a steel-haired man with cold eyes, demanded to see Leo immediately. "This is a disaster, Matthews," Wells said, spreading printouts of news articles across the mahogany conference table. "Our investors are panicking. They're questioning your judgment, your stability." He leaned forward, his voice sharp. "You need to distance yourself from this situation. Immediately." Leo stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his reflection stern against the Dallas skyline. "The situation, as you call it, is the most genuine thing that's happened to this company in years. You have until Monday to end this," Wells countered. "Or we'll call for a vote of no confidence. Your choice. The girl or the company you built from nothing." Leo's response was immediate. "Get out." Wells blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said get out and schedule a press conference for this afternoon." 3 hours later, Leo stood before a sea of cameras and microphones in Mathera's main lobby. His navy suit was perfectly pressed, but his eyes held a fire few had ever seen. "I've heard the rumors," he began, his quiet voice commanding absolute attention. "I've seen the headlines questioning Ms. Johnson's character and her role at Mathera. Let me be perfectly clear. Nia Johnson is one of the most brilliant, authentic people I've ever met. Her contribution to our mission is invaluable, and any suggestion otherwise is not only false, but reveals the very prejudices our company aims to combat." A reporter shouted from the crowd, "Are you confirming a romantic relationship?" "I'm confirming that I won't let tabloid gossip derail the important work we're doing," Leo answered firmly. "Ms. Johnson's presence at Mathera has nothing to do with my personal feelings and everything to do with her exceptional abilities. That's all I have to say on the matter." The press conference aired on every major network. Nia watched it from her office, her heart twisting as she saw the strain on Leo's face, the way his jaw clenched when defending her. She noticed the hostile stares from board members standing in the background, their disapproval evident. That evening, after most employees had gone home, Nia sat at her desk and began to write. Tears splashed onto the paper as she poured out her heart. "Dear Leo, you believed in me when no one else would. You saw past every limitation others tried to place on me, and you gave me a chance to make a real difference. But I can't let you sacrifice everything you've built because of me. The board is right about one thing. I'm a liability. Your company needs you focused and strong, not defending me against endless attacks. You've worked too hard, dreamed too big, to let this derail your vision. Thank you for showing me what it feels like to be truly seen and valued. I'll carry that gift with me always. With gratitude, Nia." She folded the letter carefully and placed it on Leo's desk, along with her keycard. The office was silent except for the soft hum of air conditioning and the click of her heels as she walked to the elevator one last time. By 4 o'clock in the morning, Nia had packed her essential belongings into her old Honda Civic. She drove south through the pre-dawn darkness, leaving behind the glittering Dallas skyline and the man who had changed her life. 2 hours later, she pulled up to a modest apartment complex in a small Texas town. The rent was cheap, and no one here would recognize her from the news. It was better this way, she told herself, unlocking the door to her new home, a blank slate where she could rebuild her life without hurting anyone else. Back in Dallas, Leo arrived at his office early, as usual. He noticed Nia's keycard first, then the letter beneath it. His hands shook slightly as he read her words, understanding dawning with devastating clarity. "No," he whispered, then louder. "No!" He ran for the elevator, jabbing the button repeatedly, though he knew, deep down, it was too late. She was gone, believing she'd saved him by walking away. The truth was, she'd taken his heart with her. The elevator doors opened to an empty lobby. Through the glass walls, he could see reporters already gathering for another day of speculation and scandal. But none of it mattered. The only person who had ever made him feel truly understood was gone. The familiar bell above Rosa's diner chimed as Nia pushed through the glass door, the scent of coffee and warm pie wrapping around her like a comforting hug. After a week of hiding in her new apartment, She'd finally ventured out into the Waco morning. "Well, if it isn't Nia Johnson." Rosa Martinez's warm voice called from behind the counter. The plump woman with silver-streaked dark hair rushed forward, enveloping Nia in an embrace that smelled of cinnamon and vanilla. "Mi corazón, what brings you back home?" Nia managed a smile, though her heart ached. "Just needed a change, Rosa. Sometimes you have to know when to walk away." Rosa's keen eyes studied her face. "From what I see on the news, maybe you walked away too soon, Nina." "You've seen the coverage?" Nia's cheeks warmed. "Everyone has. That handsome CEO of yours? He looks at you like my Carlos used to look at me." Rosa patted Nia's cheek. "But come, sit. You look like you need pancakes and a friendly ear." As Nia settled into her old favorite booth, the one with the worn red vinyl seats and slightly wobbly table, familiar faces began filtering in. Old Mrs. Henderson from her church choir days, Coach Thompson, who'd always defended her in high school. Each greeting felt like a small piece of her heart being stitched back together. "Pastor Mike was asking about you," Rosa mentioned, sliding a stack of blueberry pancakes in front of Nia. "The youth center's been struggling since Sarah left. Those teenage girls, they need someone who understands." Nia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. The youth center had been her sanctuary once, a place where she'd first learned to see herself through God's eyes instead of society's harsh lens. "Maybe I could stop by," she said softly, "just to see." 2 days later, Nia stood in the youth center's activity room, surrounded by teenage girls sprawled on bean bags and worn couches. Their faces reflected the same insecurities she'd battled at their age. "I used to sit right where you are," she began, gesturing to a purple bean bag in the corner, "thinking if I could just be skinnier, prettier, more like the girls in magazines, then I'd be worthy of love. But you're on TV now," a girl named Madison interrupted. "You were with that hot billionaire. You made it." Nia's heart clenched. "I was, but do you know what made me feel truly beautiful? It wasn't being on TV or having a powerful man's attention. It was learning to see myself the way God sees me, fearfully and wonderfully made, exactly as I am." The sessions became a weekly commitment. Nia watched as girls who once hunched to hide their bodies began standing taller, speaking louder. They shared stories of bullying, of cruel social media comments, of mothers pushing diets and boyfriends making conditions. Meanwhile, in Dallas, Leo Matthews sat alone in his penthouse, the city lights twinkling beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. The space felt colder now, its minimal design no longer peaceful but empty. On his tablet, security footage played on loop, Nia walking to the elevator at 4:17 in the morning, her letter still sitting on his desk. "You didn't ruin me, Nia," he whispered to the image. "You woke me up." The past week had been chaos. 3 major investors had pulled out, citing unstable leadership. The board was in upheaval, demanding he focus on damage control. Instead, he'd buried himself in the wellness platform's code, stripping away artificial marketing speak and replacing it with raw honesty. His phone buzzed. Another missed board meeting. The device showed 47 unread messages, most from his executive team. Leo ignored them all, continuing to type. "Welcome to Mathera 2.0. We don't promise perfection. We promise presence. Your body isn't a problem to solve. It's the home you live in. Let's make it a place of peace." The words flowed naturally now, inspired by memories of Nia's passionate speeches about authentic self-worth. Each line of code felt like a letter he couldn't send her. "Mr. Matthews?" His assistant's voice came through the intercom. "The board has hired Preston Communications for crisis management. Their representative will be here tomorrow morning." Leo barely acknowledged the information, lost in rebuilding the program that had brought Nia into his life. On his screen, Her final words glowed. "Thank you for showing me what it feels like to be truly seen and valued." "I did see you," he murmured, his fingers hovering over the keys. "I'm still seeing you." Back in Waco, Nia sat cross-legged on her small apartment floor, surrounded by journals filled with notes from her youth center sessions. The girls' stories were becoming a tapestry of shared struggle and hope. She'd started recording voice notes for a potential podcast series, not about corporate wellness or viral fame, but about finding God's light in life's darkest mirrors. Her phone lit up with a news alert. Mathura stock plummets amid CEO's absence. The photo showed Leo looking tired, his usual pristine appearance slightly rumpled as he ducked into his car. Nia's hand trembled as she quickly closed the article. She couldn't let herself wonder if she'd made the right choice. The memory of his words at the press conference still echoed. "Nia Johnson is one of the most brilliant, authentic people I've ever met." "I'm sorry," she whispered to the empty room. "I'm so sorry I couldn't be strong enough to stay." The days fell into a rhythm. Mornings at Rosa's Diner, afternoons at the youth center, evenings writing curriculum for a body image support group. She was doing good work here, meaningful work. But every night, as she lay in her narrow bed, her heart whispered of glass towers and gentle brown eyes that saw straight through her walls. In Dallas, Leo's assistant knocked tentatively on his office door. "Sir, the PR consultant is here." He didn't look up from his computer. "Send them in." The door opened, and a familiar voice sliced through the air. "Well, well, the Virgin CEO himself." Leo's head snapped up. Standing in his doorway was a face he'd seen in photographs on Nia's old blog, her former best friend, the one who'd humiliated her at that church youth group years ago, the woman who'd taught Nia that even those closest to you could weaponize your vulnerabilities. The universe, it seemed, had a cruel sense of irony. The Virgin CEO himself. Camille Harris's voice cut through Leo's office like a polished blade. She stood in the doorway, sleek and sharp, in a white designer suit, her dark hair pulled into a severe bun that emphasized her high cheekbones. Leo's fingers stilled on his keyboard. He recognized her instantly from the photos in Nia's old blog posts, the same superior smile, the same calculating eyes. His stomach tightened as he remembered Nia's stories about her former best friend, the college roommate who'd turned from confidant to tormentor. "Miss Harris," he said coolly, standing to his full height. "I wasn't aware Preston Communications had assigned you specifically to our account." Camille's heels clicked against the hardwood as she approached his desk. "Oh, I requested it personally. When I heard about Mathura's situation, I knew I had to help." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "After all, I have unique insight into certain aspects of this case." Leo's jaw tightened. "You mean your history with Nia Johnson?" "So formal." Camille laughed, settling into one of his guest chairs without invitation. "Yes, Nia and I go way back, which is exactly why I can help you distance yourself from this PR nightmare." "The only nightmare," Leo said quietly, "is how the media has twisted something genuine into clickbait." Camille's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "Genuine? Leo, may I call you Leo? Let's be honest. Nia's whole love yourself at any size platform is sentimental nonsense. It's not backed by science or market research. It's just feel-good fluff that's cost you millions in market value." The dismissive way she waved her hand made Leo's blood pressure rise. He thought of Nia's passionate presentations, the way her eyes lit up when talking about helping people find self-worth. There was nothing fluffy about the tears in teenagers' eyes when they finally felt seen. Over the next week, Camille became a constant presence in the office. She scheduled late-night strategy sessions, presenting sleek PowerPoints about repositioning the brand and distancing from controversial figures. Each meeting left Leo more tense, his shoulders tight with unspoken arguments. "The problem," Camille announced during one particularly late session, "is that we've let emotion override logic. Mathura was built on data-driven wellness solutions. Now it's being associated with touchy-feely support groups." Leo watched her pace his office, her shadow sharp against the night skyline. "Those support groups are changing lives. But are they making money?" Camille spun to face him. "Face it, Leo. You got caught up in a fantasy. Nia has that effect on people, making them believe in fairy tales about inner beauty and God's perfect design." Her voice dripped with disdain. 200 miles south in Waco, Nia was serving coffee at Rosa's diner when she overheard the whispered conversation. "Did you see who Mathura hired?" One regular customer murmured to another. "That PR consultant from Dallas, Camille Harris." The coffee pot trembled in Nia's hand. Memories flooded back. Camille standing in their shared dorm room, voice cruel with false concern. "Men like Leo don't marry girls like you, honey. They might play at being noble, but they always choose someone appropriate." That night, Nia knelt beside her bed, hands clasped tight. "Lord," she whispered, "give me strength to keep moving forward. Help me remember that your love is bigger than human rejection." Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, one of her youth center girls. "Miss Nia, thank you for teaching me I'm worthy of respect. My mom finally agreed to stop pushing diet pills." Nia smiled through tears, clutching the phone to her chest. This was why she'd started speaking out. This was what mattered. But the next morning, headlines screamed across social media. "Mathura CEO emotionally manipulated by overweight speaker, inside source reveals truth." The quote was attributed to an anonymous consultant. Leo Matthews is known for his analytical brilliance, but even geniuses can be swayed by calculated emotional appeals. The recent partnership with an overweight motivational speaker was clearly a manipulation of his well-documented social awkwardness. Comment sections exploded with cruel memes and worse speculation. Camille's carefully planted seed bloomed into a thorny garden of public opinion. In his office, Leo stared at the headlines, his hands clenched into fists. The words were precise, professional, and utterly poisonous. He recognized Camille's touch in every syllable. His phone rang, the board chairman demanding an emergency meeting. But Leo couldn't focus on the call. His eyes kept drifting to the empty visitor's chair where Nia used to sit, her warm laugh filling the room with light. "Your big body drives me wild," he'd told her in the garden, "because you're real." Now Camille was trying to twist that reality into something ugly, something calculated. At Rosa's diner, Nia's co-workers tried to shield her from customers reading the articles aloud. But she heard anyway, heard the snickers, the whispers, the judgment rushing back like a toxic tide. "Sugar, you don't need to finish your shift," Rosa said gently, taking the coffee pot from Nia's trembling hands. But Nia straightened her spine, adjusted her apron. "Yes, I do," she said quietly, "because every time I hide, I tell those girls at the youth center it's okay to be ashamed, and I won't do that anymore." She served coffee with her head high, even as phones displayed her face alongside cruel headlines. Each step felt like walking through deep water, but she kept moving. In Dallas, Leo sat in another late meeting, watching Camille present charts showing Mathura's recovering stock prices since Nia's departure. Her voice was smooth as she outlined plans to restore the company's serious image. But all Leo could see was the empty space where authenticity used to live. All he could hear was the silence where Nia's laughter should be. The PR strategy was working, according to the numbers. But as Leo looked around his gleaming office, at the sharp edges and cold efficiency Camille praised, he wondered what they were really gaining by losing their heart. The morning sun filtered through stained glass windows, casting kaleidoscope patterns across the worn wooden pews of First Baptist Church of Waco. Nia Johnson sat in her usual spot, third row from the back, watching as her group of teenage girls filed into the youth room for their pre-service meeting. Sarah, a 14-year-old with copper braids, clutched her journal close to her chest. Marina, 16 and struggling with an eating disorder, kept tugging at her oversized sweater. 6 other girls settled into the circle of chairs, their eyes finding Nia's face like flowers turning toward the sun. "Good morning, beautiful souls," Nia said softly, smoothing her floral dress over her knees. "Who wants to share first?" Sarah's hand shot up. "I did it, Miss Nia. I wore the swimsuit to my cousin's pool party yesterday." Her voice quivered. "Some kids laughed, but I remembered what you said about being God's masterpiece." Nia's heart swelled with pride and ache. "And how did that feel?" "Scary, but powerful. Like, if God made me this way, maybe the problem isn't me, maybe it's them." Marina shifted in her chair. "My mom keeps saying I need to lose 20 pounds before college applications. She says appearance matters for scholarships." Tears gathered in her dark eyes. "But then I think about what you taught us, that God doesn't make accidents, He makes art." The words echoed in Nia's chest, familiar yet suddenly heavy. She leaned forward, meeting each girl's gaze. "That's right. Every curve, every freckle, every single thing that makes you uniquely you, that's divine craftsmanship. The world might try to sell you a different story, but God's truth is written in your DNA." The girls nodded, some wiping tears, others squeezing hands. But behind Nia's encouraging smile, doubt gnawed at her heart. Her phone sat heavy in her purse, containing a video clip she'd seen that morning, Leo Matthews on Business Today, defending her departure from Mathera. He looked different. The confident CEO she'd known was replaced by someone paler, more withdrawn. Dark circles shadowed his eyes as he faced the aggressive interviewer. "Miss Johnson's contributions to our wellness initiative were invaluable," he'd said, his voice steady despite his exhausted appearance. "Her departure was a personal choice we respect, but her impact on Mathera's mission remains significant." The memory of his words made Nia's stomach clench. She'd left to protect him, but watching him shoulder the aftermath alone felt like a betrayal of everything she believed about standing firm in truth. After the youth meeting, Nia slipped into the main sanctuary. Pastor Elijah Reed's sermon seemed aimed directly at her heart. Fear and faith cannot coexist. Where one grows, the other withers. When the final hymn faded, she lingered in her pew, watching families file out. Pastor Reed found her there, his weathered face gentle with understanding. "Heavy thoughts today?" he asked, settling beside her. Nia nodded, tears threatening. "I thought I was being selfless, leaving like that, protecting him from the scandal, the judgment. But watching him defend me still, even after I ran..." She wiped her eyes. "Maybe I just took the coward's way out." Pastor Reed was quiet for a moment, his hands folded in his lap. "Nia, child, you left out of fear, not faith. Fear of causing pain, fear of not being enough. But those fears aren't from God. They're from a world that's forgotten how to see beauty in all its forms." "But the damage is done," Nia whispered. "The media, the investors, they're all saying I manipulated him, that I used my size, my emotional approach to cloud his judgment. And what does your heart say?" "That I loved him." The words slipped out before she could catch them. "Love him," she corrected softly. "But love shouldn't hurt someone's life work." Pastor Reed touched her shoulder. "Sometimes our greatest act of faith is believing we're worthy of the love we're given. You teach those girls to see themselves through God's eyes. Maybe it's time you did the same." That evening, in her small apartment above Rosa's diner, Nia set up her podcast equipment. The familiar sight of her microphone and laptop brought a measure of peace. This was her ministry, her way of reaching hearts beyond church walls. She titled the new episode, "The Fear of Being Seen," and pressed record. Hello, beautiful souls. Tonight, let's talk about hiding. About running from love because we're afraid we don't deserve it. About the difference between protecting others and protecting our own wounded hearts. Her voice grew stronger as she shared her story, not naming names, but speaking truth about fear disguised as sacrifice, about leaving instead of standing firm in faith, about the courage it takes to believe you're worthy of being seen, really seen, by someone who looks past society's standards to your soul. 200 miles north, in a darkened office high above Dallas, Leo Matthews sat at his desk. His computer screen showed Nia's podcast website, the play button glowing like a beacon. Her voice filled the space, warm and real and achingly familiar. He listened as she spoke about fear and worth, about running from love. His hand moved automatically, grabbing a notepad. In the blue glow of his screen, he wrote 2 simple lines. Find her, not for PR, for peace. The note sat there, a declaration in black ink, while Nia's voice continued painting truth in the darkness. Neither knew the other was reaching across the distance, both searching for the courage to believe in something bigger than fear. In Waco, Nia finished her recording and sat back, emotionally drained but somehow lighter. On her desk sat a framed photo of her youth group girls, their faces shining with newfound confidence. Beside it lay her Bible, opened to Psalm 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? She touched the words gently, remembering Pastor Reed's message. Fear or faith? It was time to choose. The Austin Convention Center hummed with anticipation as hundreds gathered for the annual Faith and Purpose Conference. Nia adjusted her rose-colored blazer backstage, her hands trembling slightly as she reviewed her notes. The topic, forgiveness, God's gift to the wounded heart, felt almost too personal now. 5 minutes, Miss Johnson, a young event coordinator called out. Nia nodded, smoothing her dark curls. Her coral dress swished around her knees as she paced, practicing deep breaths like she taught her youth group girls. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, about to speak on forgiveness when she couldn't even forgive herself. The stage lights warmed her skin as she walked out. Hundreds of faces looked up expectantly, notebooks ready. Nia's smile came naturally. This was her element, where God's truth flowed through her despite her fears. Good morning, beautiful souls, she began, her rich voice carrying through the space. Today we're talking about something that sounds simple but costs everything. Forgiveness. As she shared stories of healing and grace, her eyes scanned the crowd. Then her heart stuttered. There, near the back wall, stood a familiar figure in a navy blue polo that stretched across broad shoulders. Leo Matthews. His usually perfect hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it. Their eyes met across the distance, and for a moment the world seemed to pause. Nia's voice wavered slightly before finding strength again. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself. We carry shame like armor, thinking it protects us. But shame is a prison God never meant us to live in. She watched Leo lean against the wall, his intense gaze never leaving her. Her prepared speech transformed into something rawer, more urgent. We run from love because we're afraid it's too good to be true. We sacrifice joy on the altar of our insecurities. But God didn't design us for fear. He designed us for love. Throughout her 45-minute talk, she found herself returning to his eyes, drawing courage from his presence. When she finished with a prayer, the applause was thunderous, but she barely heard it. Her heart was pounding too loudly. Backstage, she barely had time to gather her thoughts before she heard footsteps. She turned to find Leo standing there, emotion clear on his usually composed face. His brown eyes were bright with unshed tears. "They called you too fat to marry," he said, his voice trembling with intensity. "I call you the reason I believe in love." The words hit her like a wave, washing away weeks of doubt and self-protection. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she stepped forward, and suddenly his arms were around her, strong and sure. She buried her face in his chest, breathing in his familiar scent of cedar and clean cotton. A collective awe made them both look up. A group of conference attendees had witnessed their reunion, some wiping away tears of their own. Someone started clapping, and soon the whole hallway joined in. Nia laughed through her tears, feeling both embarrassed and completely seen. Leo's arms tightened around her protectively, but his smile was genuine as he nodded to their impromptu audience. "Come on," he whispered in her ear. "I know a quiet place where we can talk." That place turned out to be Lucy's Diner, a small establishment with worn leather booths and the kind of coffee that tasted like comfort. They sat across from each other, steam rising from their mugs as the afternoon sun painted everything golden through dusty windows. "How did you find me?" Nia asked, warming her hands around her cup. Leo's fingers fidgeted with his napkin. "I heard your podcast, the one about fear and being seen. Then I had my assistant track down your speaking schedule." He looked up, a hint of uncertainty in his expression. "Was that too stalkerish?" She shook her head, smiling. "No, it was brave." "I missed you," he said simply. "The office feels empty without your laugh. The project feels hollow without your heart in it." "I'm sorry I ran," Nia whispered, tears threatening again. "I thought I was protecting you, but really, I was protecting myself. From hoping too much, from believing I could be enough." "You've always been more than enough." Leo reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "I should have fought harder when you left. Should have followed you immediately. Maybe we both needed this time," Nia suggested, "to understand what we really want." They talked for hours as the diner slowly emptied around them. About Camille's betrayal, about the board's pressure, about their shared fears of being used or misunderstood. The waitress Sandra kept their coffee cups full, tactfully ignoring the occasional tears and frequent laughter. "I fired Camille," Leo mentioned as the sun began to set. "The day after she leaked that quote about emotional manipulation, I told the board they could either accept my leadership or buy me out entirely. What did they do? They backed down. Turns out the Virgin CEO has some backbone after all." His smile was wry but confident. Nia squeezed his hand. "You've always had backbone. You just needed something worth fighting for." "Someone," he corrected softly. The moment stretched between them, full of possibility. Finally, Nia spoke. "Where do we go from here?" "I'd like to start over," Leo said carefully. "Not pretending the past didn't happen, but building something new, something real." He paused, then added, "As friends first. No pressure, no expectations. Just us getting to know each other without the world watching." Relief and warmth flooded through Nia. "I'd like that." As they prepared to leave, Leo helped her with her jacket, his hands lingering slightly on her shoulders. The gesture was gentle, respectful, but charged with unspoken emotion. "Thank you for coming today," Nia said as they stood in the parking lot. The Texas evening was cooling, stars beginning to pepper the darkening sky. "Thank you for teaching me about forgiveness," Leo replied. His smile was soft in the gathering dusk. Both giving it and receiving it. They didn't kiss goodbye. But their hug lasted longer than strictly necessary. As Nia watched his car disappear into the Austin traffic, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. They had chosen faith over fear, forgiveness over pride. The road ahead might be slow, but it felt right, like coming home to a truth she'd always known but needed time to accept. Inside her purse, her phone buzzed with a text from Leo. "Coffee next week? As friends?" Nia smiled, typing back, "As friends. For now." The "for now" felt like a promise, not a limitation. Sometimes the slowest paths led to the strongest foundations, and this time they were both ready to build something that would last. The morning sunlight streamed through Nia's hotel room window in Austin, catching the sparkles on her conference badge from yesterday. Her phone buzzed with a text from Leo. "Ready for Houston. Car arriving in 30 minutes." Her heart fluttered as she read his follow-up message. "The True Body prototype is good, but it needs your voice, your heart. Please come with me." Even through text, his sincerity touched her. After their coffee shop reconciliation yesterday, everything felt different. Lighter, more hopeful. She quickly packed her overnight bag, smoothing down her coral dress that fell softly over her curves. The sleek company car arrived right on time. Leo stepped out, looking handsome but tired in his signature navy polo and blazer. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, though his smile was warm. "You didn't have to come get me yourself," Nia said as he helped her with her bag. "I wanted to." He looked a bit pale in the morning light. "Besides, we can go over the presentation during the drive." During the 3-hour journey to Houston, Leo shared his vision for rebranding Mathera. The True Body platform would focus on emotional wellness alongside physical health, incorporating Nia's messages about self-worth and faith. "It's not just about looking good anymore," he explained, his voice passionate despite his apparent fatigue. "It's about feeling whole, about accepting yourself as God made you." Nia noticed him rubbing his chest occasionally, but didn't comment. She assumed it was just stress about the presentation. The Houston Convention Center buzzed with energy as tech industry leaders gathered for the summit. Nia felt the familiar flutter of nerves as they prepared backstage, but Leo's steady presence beside her kept her grounded. "Ready?" he asked, squeezing her hand gently. She nodded, smoothing her dress one last time. "Ready?" The presentation started beautifully. Leo introduced the new direction for Mathera with conviction, his voice strong despite his pallor. When he called Nia to join him on stage, the audience leaned forward, clearly intrigued. "The future of wellness isn't about shame," Nia began, falling into her natural rhythm. "It's about embracing our authentic selves." She was mid-sentence when she heard a sharp intake of breath beside her. Turning, she saw Leo clutching his chest, his face contorted in pain. "Leo." Her voice wavered. Time seemed to slow as she watched him sway. His eyes met hers, filled with confusion and fear before they rolled back. His knees buckled. "Leo!" Nia screamed, lunging forward as he collapsed. Her hands caught his shoulders before his head could hit the stage, but his weight pulled them both down. "Someone call 911!" The audience erupted in chaos. Camera flashes exploded around them as Nia cradled Leo's head in her lap, her hands trembling as she checked his pulse. It was there, but weak and irregular. "Please, God," she whispered, tears falling onto his face. "Please don't take him." The paramedics arrived within minutes, though it felt like hours to Nia. She rode in the ambulance, holding Leo's hand as the EMTs worked, praying continuously under her breath. At Houston Methodist Hospital, doctors whisked Leo away, leaving Nia alone in the sterile waiting room. She paced, her heels clicking against the linoleum floor, until a commotion at the entrance made her look up. A tall, elegant woman in her 60s burst through the doors, followed by hospital staff. Her silver hair was perfectly coiffed, her designer outfit immaculate, but her face was twisted with worry and anger. "Where is my son?" she demanded, then spotted Nia. Her eyes narrowed. You're the one who's been causing all this trouble." "Mrs. Matthews." Nia started, her voice trembling. Save it." Leo's mother cut her off. "I've seen the news coverage. My son was fine until you came along with your mission and your message. Do you know what the stress of these past weeks has done to him?" A doctor appeared before Nia could respond. "Mrs. Matthews, I'm Dr. Richardson. Your son has a condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's a hereditary heart condition that—" "I know what it is," Mrs. Matthews interrupted. "His father had it. We've been monitoring Leo since childhood." She shot Nia an accusatory glance. "Though apparently he's been pushing himself too hard lately." The doctor nodded gravely. "The condition has been exacerbated by extreme stress and exhaustion. We're stabilizing him now, but he'll need rest and careful monitoring." "I want to see him," Nia said quietly. Mrs. Matthews turned on her, eyes flashing. "Absolutely not. You've done enough damage." She addressed the doctor. "I want this woman barred from my son's room. Family only." "Mrs. Matthews, please," Nia pleaded, tears flowing freely now. "I care about Leo. I just want to know he's okay." "Care about him?" The older woman's laugh was bitter. "You care about what he can do for your career, about the attention you can get from being seen with him. Well, it stops now. Stay away from my son." The doctor looked uncomfortable but nodded to a nurse. "Perhaps it would be best if you waited elsewhere, miss." Nia stood there, devastated, as Mrs. Matthews followed the doctor to Leo's room. Her feet carried her automatically through the hospital corridors until she found herself at the chapel door. The small room was empty, lit only by flickering candles and the soft glow of stained glass. Nia sank into a pew, her body shaking with sobs. "Lord," she whispered, her voice breaking, "I know I'm not perfect. I know I ran when I should have stayed, doubted when I should have trusted. But please," she drew a shuddering breath, "if you must take him knowing he found love. Real love, not the kind that wants anything from him except his heart." The candles flickered as she wept, their steady flames the only answer to her prayers. Outside the chapel windows, the Texas sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of hope and heartache. Nia remained there, her tears gradually subsiding into quiet prayer. She thought about Leo's smile just that morning, about his passion for changing lives, about the gentle way he'd held her hand at the diner. Her heart ached with the possibility of losing him just when they'd found their way back to each other. But even in her pain, she felt a flutter of faith. God had brought them together for a reason. Whether that reason was meant to last a lifetime or just long enough to change them both, she had to trust in His plan. As darkness fell outside the chapel windows, Nia wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. She couldn't be with Leo physically, but she could surround him with prayer, with love, with faith in his strength to fight through this. She lit a candle, its flame steady and bright in the growing darkness. "Watch over him, Lord," she whispered, "and give me strength to trust your plan, whatever it may be." The chapel remained quiet, sacred in its stillness, as Nia continued her vigil of prayer and hope. Outside, the hospital corridors buzzed with activity. But in here, in this moment, there was only faith, and the flicker of love that refused to be extinguished by fear or doubt. Time lost all meaning in the sterile confines of the hospital. The rhythmic beeping of monitors marked the passage of hours, while fluorescent lights cast their unchanging glow regardless of day or night. For 3 days, Leo Matthews drifted in and out of consciousness, his body slowly recovering from the surgery that had saved his life. On the fourth morning, he opened his eyes to find himself alone in the private room. Sunlight streamed through half-drawn blinds, creating patterns on the pale blue walls. His chest ached beneath the bandages, a constant reminder of his mortality. With trembling fingers, he reached for his phone on the bedside table. His mother had left it there, probably hoping he would rest instead of working. But Leo had other plans. He opened the video app and typed Nia Johnson into the search bar. Her face appeared on the screen, radiant and genuine as always. The timestamp showed this was from 2 months ago, before they had met at the gala. Today we're talking about courage. Video Nia began, her warm voice filling the quiet room. Not the kind that makes you fearless, but the kind that makes you keep going even when you're terrified. Leo's throat tightened as he watched her speak, remembering how that same voice had screamed his name when he collapsed. He scrolled through more videos, each one a testament to her authenticity and wisdom. In one particularly moving clip, Nia stood before a group of teenage girls at a church youth event. Her blush-pink dress caught the light as she gestured expressively. "Loving your body means loving your life, scars and all," she declared, her eyes bright with conviction. "These marks we carry, whether they're on our skin or in our hearts, they're proof that we've lived, that we've survived, that we're still here fighting." The words hit him like a physical force. Tears welled up in his eyes, surprising him. Leo Matthews, the man who had built an empire on controlled emotions and logical decisions, found himself weeping openly for the first time since childhood. The tears weren't just for Nia, though she occupied a large space in his heart. They were for everything: the years of loneliness, the constant pressure to be perfect, the exhaustion of maintaining walls that kept everyone at arm's length. As he cried, something inside him began to heal, something deeper than his physical heart. A soft knock interrupted his emotional release. Hastily wiping his eyes, he called out a weak, "Come in." Marcus Chen, his chief technology officer and one of his few true friends, stepped into the room. "Hey boss, you're looking better." Leo managed a small smile. "Better than unconscious on a stage, you mean? Man, you scared us all half to death," Marcus said, settling into the visitor's chair. He hesitated before adding, "Nia's been asking about you." Leo's heart monitor betrayed his reaction with a slight acceleration in beeps. "She has." Marcus nodded. "She's been checking in through me since your mother." He trailed off diplomatically. "Since my mother banned her," Leo finished flatly. "How is she?" "Worried. Praying a lot from what I hear." Marcus's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it. "Speaking of which." Just then a nurse entered, pushing a cart laden with flowers. "Special delivery for Mr. Matthews," she announced cheerfully. "These just arrived at the front desk." The arrangement was stunning. White lilies and blue delphiniums in a simple crystal vase. Leo reached for the card with unsteady fingers. "Praying for your complete recovery. Take care of that beautiful heart. NJ." A smile touched his lips, soft and genuine. "She still cares," he whispered, more to himself than to Marcus. "Of course she does," Marcus replied. "Anyone with eyes can see what's between you two." Leo traced the initials on the card, remembering how it felt to hold her hand, to see her smile, to share quiet moments when the world's judgment couldn't touch them. He looked up at Marcus. "Can you bring me some paper and a pen?" "Your mother said no work. It's not for work." Leo interrupted. "I need to write something personal." Understanding dawned on Marcus's face, and he nodded. "Give me 5 minutes." When Marcus returned with the requested items, Leo began to write. His hands were shaky from weakness, making his usually precise handwriting irregular, but he pressed on. The words flowed from his heart, unfiltered by his usual careful analysis. "Dear Nia," he began, then paused, overwhelmed by everything he wanted to say. How could he explain that her videos had become his lifeline in this sterile room? How could he tell her that her words about loving life's scars had broken down walls he'd maintained for decades? The letter took shape slowly, his trembling hands requiring frequent rests. But he continued writing, pouring out his heart onto the paper, letting his tears fall freely when they came. In this private moment, he finally allowed himself to be as vulnerable as she had always encouraged him to be. Outside his room, nurses changed shifts, visitors came and went, and the Texas sun traced its arc across the sky. But Leo remained focused on his task, crafting each word with care, knowing that somehow these shaky lines would bridge the distance between them. The monitors continued their steady beeping, but now they seemed to echo with hope rather than concern. In the vase by his bed, the lilies and delphiniums stood tall and proud, their beauty a reminder of the woman who had taught him that strength could be found in softness and that love was worth every risk. Marcus watched his friend writing from the doorway, a small smile on his face. He saw what others often missed, that beneath the billionaire CEO's controlled exterior beat a heart capable of profound love. And now, thanks to a woman who had dared to be real in a world of pretense, that heart was finally learning to speak its truth. Nia sorted through donation boxes at the Waco Community Church office, her mind wandering to the flowers she'd sent Leo 2 days ago. The morning light streamed through stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across the worn carpet as she organized clothes for the youth ministry's clothing drive. "Miss Johnson?" The church secretary, Mrs. Martinez, appeared in the doorway. "There's a courier here for you." Nia's heart skipped. A young man in a pressed uniform handed her a thick manila envelope, requiring her signature on his tablet. Her hands trembled as she saw the return address, Mathura Industries. "Thank you," she managed, retreating to the quiet corner office she sometimes used for counseling sessions. The envelope felt heavy with possibility. Inside, she found several pages of handwritten text, the usually precise penmanship slightly shaky, but still elegant. Her eyes welled up at the physical evidence of his recovery struggle, each wobbly letter telling its own story of effort and determination. "Dear Nia," the letter began. She sank into the old leather chair, holding the pages close as she read. "I used to think purity meant isolation. Now I know it means truth. You taught me that. When I said your body drives me wild, I meant your soul does too. These past days in the hospital have given me time to think. Perhaps too much time. I've watched every video of yours I could find, letting your words about courage and forgiveness wash over me like medicine, more effective than anything they're pumping through these IV lines. You spoke once about how our scars tell stories of survival. I've been thinking about my own scars, not just the new one on my chest, but the invisible ones that kept me locked away from real connection for so long. You were the first person who made me want to show those scars, to stop hiding behind perfection and control. The doctors say my heart condition was partly genetic, partly stress, but I think it was also from years of keeping my heart too guarded. You changed that. You showed me that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the purest kind of strength." Nia pressed her hand to her mouth, tears flowing freely now. Without thinking, she gathered her purse and keys, calling out to Mrs. Martinez that she needed to leave early. The drive to Dallas seemed endless. Her hands gripped the steering wheel as she navigated through midday traffic, her mind replaying every moment with Leo, their first meeting at the gala, quiet dinners, walks in the garden, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her. At Dallas Memorial Hospital, she parked hastily and rushed to the information desk, her heart pounding. "I'm here to see Leo Matthews." She she said, trying to keep her voice steady. The nurse at the desk frowned slightly. Mr. Matthews is under restricted visitation. Are you family? No, but I'm... Nia hesitated, unsure how to define what she was to Leo. She's exactly who I've been waiting for. A familiar voice called out. Nia turned to see Marcus Chen, Leo's CTO, approaching with a warm smile. I'll escort her up, Nancy. Mr. Matthews has approved this visitor. The elevator ride to the cardiac floor was quiet, but Marcus squeezed her shoulder supportively. He's been hoping you'd come, he said softly. Outside Leo's private room, the floor nurse still looked uncertain. Mrs. Matthews left strict instructions, and Mr. Matthews has left stricter ones. Marcus countered firmly. He's awake and alert, and he wants to see her. From inside the room, Leo's voice carried clearly. Let her in, please. It's okay. The nurse relented, and Nia stepped into the sunlit room. Leo lay propped up against white pillows, looking pale but alert. His navy hospital gown made his eyes seem darker, more intense as they fixed on her. You came, he said simply, his voice rough with emotion. Your letter, she began, moving to his bedside. Leo, pull up a chair. He patted the space beside his bed. Unless you're worried about being seen with the invalid CEO. A laugh bubbled up through her tears. You know, most people wait for actual retirement to take medical leave. What can I say? I'm an overachiever. His attempt at a shrug was limited by monitoring wires, making them both chuckle. She settled into the chair, taking in the various machines and monitors surrounding his bed. How are you really feeling? Better now, he said softly, reaching for her hand. His grip was weaker than she remembered, but his touch still sent warmth through her entire body. I've been thinking about what you said in your video about loving life's scars. And I think I'm finally ready to stop hiding mine. He traced small circles on her palm with his thumb. The doctors say I'll need to make some changes. Less stress, more balance. Sounds terrible. She teased gently. However will the famous workaholic CEO manage? I have some ideas. He smiled. There's this amazing life coach I know who specializes in helping people embrace their authentic selves. They talked for hours, the afternoon light shifting to evening shadows. They discussed everything and nothing, his recovery progress, her youth ministry work, funny stories about hospital food and well-meaning but overzealous prayer chains from her church. Sister Margaret has the whole congregation praying for your heart, she told him, laughing, though I think she's praying for more than just the physical healing. Smart woman, Leo murmured, his eyes growing heavy despite his obvious desire to keep talking. Nia noticed his increasing fatigue and began to gather her purse. I should let you rest. Stay till I fall asleep? The request came soft and vulnerable, so different from his usual controlled demeanor. Just a little longer? Of course, she whispered, settling back into her chair and taking his hand again. The room grew quiet except for the steady beeping of monitors. Leo's breathing gradually deepened and evened out, his face relaxing into peaceful sleep. Nia sat still, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest, her thumb stroking his knuckles in time with the monitor's rhythm. In the dimming light, she offered up a silent prayer of gratitude. For his survival, for his letter, for this quiet moment of connection. The machines kept their vigilant watch, their electronic hums a reminder that sometimes love's strongest moments come in life's most vulnerable spaces. The mid-July sun cast long shadows across the wooden dock as Leo Matthews took careful steps, his hand gripping the railing. 6 weeks of hospital stays and rehabilitation had left him stronger, but still not quite himself. Behind him, Nia Johnson watched attentively, ready to steady him if needed. "I can feel you hovering," Leo said with a gentle smile, not turning around. "I promise I won't topple into the lake. Can you blame me?" Nia adjusted the light sweater around her shoulders. "The last thing we need is another hospital visit." The lakeside house sprawled behind them, its modern lines softened by natural stone and warm woods. It was smaller than anyone might expect for a billionaire's residence, just 3 bedrooms and an open-plan living area. But the wall-to-wall windows offered stunning views of Lake Ray Hubbard, and the quiet location provided the perfect setting for recovery. Leo reached the end of the dock and lowered himself carefully onto the cushioned bench. Nia settled beside him, close enough to feel his warmth, but not so close as to crowd him. These past weeks had taught them both the delicate dance of care and independence. "The physical therapist says I'm making good progress," Leo said, his voice stronger than it had been even a week ago, though I suspect having a dedicated caregiver has helped. Nia smiled, remembering how naturally they'd fallen into their routine after his discharge. Every morning began with gentle walks around the property, followed by sharing devotional readings over breakfast. She'd work on her podcast content while he handled essential Mathura business, strictly limited to 2 hours per day, as per doctor's orders. Their afternoons were filled with rehabilitation exercises, quiet conversations, and peaceful moments like this one. "I still can't believe your mother agreed to let me take care of you," Nia said, watching a flock of birds skim across the water's surface. Leo chuckled. "I didn't give her much choice. Sometimes being stubborn has its advantages." The mention of his mother brought back memories of those tense hospital days, but they'd moved past that now. Even Mrs. Matthews had softened slightly after seeing how dedicated Nia was to Leo's recovery. "Besides," Leo continued, his voice growing serious, "you're the only one I trust to see me like this. Vulnerable. Imperfect." The setting sun painted the lake in shades of gold and pink, reflecting off the gentle ripples. A cool breeze carried the scent of water and pine, rustling through the trees that lined the shore. "I've been thinking about something," Nia said slowly, watching the colors change on the water. "That day I left Mathura, I convinced myself I was doing the right thing, that walking away would somehow protect you from all the criticism and pressure." Leo turned to face her, his brown eyes intense despite his still pale complexion. "You did save me, Nia, just not in the way you thought." "What do you mean?" "You saved the part of me that had forgotten how to love." His voice was soft but certain. "I'd spent so many years building walls, convincing myself that isolation meant strength, that success meant never letting anyone see the real me." Nia's breath caught in her throat as Leo reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. The touch was familiar now after weeks of helping him with exercises and steadying his steps, but this felt different. "When you came into my life," he continued, "you didn't just show me a different way to run my company. You showed me a different way to live, to trust, to believe in something bigger than spreadsheets and stock prices." Tears welled in Nia's eyes as she remembered their journey, from that first champagne spill to boardroom battles, from heartbreak to healing. "God has a funny way of working things out, doesn't he?" "He does," Leo agreed, reaching up to brush a tear from her cheek. "And I think maybe it's time we stopped fighting his plan." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken words and years of longing. Then, with infinite tenderness, Leo leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle, almost reverent, a beginning rather than an ending. When they finally parted, Nia rested her forehead against his, their breaths mingling in the cooling evening air. Are you sure about this? She whispered. There will still be talk, still be people who let them talk. Leo said firmly. I'm done hiding what matters most. They sat in comfortable silence as the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Leo's thumb traced patterns on Nia's palm, a gesture that had become his unconscious habit during their time together. I want to rebuild Mathera, he said suddenly. Not just the wellness platform, the whole company. Transform it into TrueBody, with your philosophy at its core. Naya turned to look at him, surprised. What exactly do you mean? Your message about authentic self-worth, about finding strength in faith rather than appearance, it's not just for people struggling with body image, it's for everyone who's ever felt they weren't enough. His eyes lit up with the familiar spark of innovation. We could create programs that combine technology with real human connection, that foster genuine community instead of competition. That's a huge undertaking, Nia said carefully. The board will either see the vision or they won't. Leo shrugged. But I'm done letting fear of criticism dictate my choices, both personally and professionally. To emphasize his point, he leaned in for another kiss, this one more confident than the first. When they separated, Nia couldn't help but laugh. You know, for someone who's supposed to be taking it easy, you sure dream big. I learned from the best. He smiled, squeezing her hand. You never let your size stop you from changing lives. Why should I let a heart condition stop me from revolutionizing wellness technology? The stars were beginning to appear overhead, their reflections dancing on the dark water. A slight chill had crept into the air, but neither seemed eager to move from their spot on the dock. We should probably head inside, Nia said reluctantly. You need your rest, and I promised to call the physical therapist with today's progress report. Leo nodded, but held her hand firmly when she started to rise. Thank you, he said softly. Not just for taking care of me these past weeks, but for showing me what real strength looks like, what real love looks like. Nia helped him to his feet, supporting him with the practiced ease of someone who had learned every nuance of another's movements. Together, they walked slowly back towards the house, their shadows merging in the fading light. Inside, the warm glow of lamplight welcomed them home. As Leo settled onto the couch with his evening medication, Nia moved around the kitchen preparing his prescribed heart-healthy dinner. The domestic rhythm they'd developed felt as natural as breathing, comfortable yet charged with new possibility after their shared moment on the dock. Both knew that challenges lay ahead. Board meetings, public opinion, family expectations. But for now, in this peaceful space they'd created together, those concerns seemed distant and manageable. They had found something rare and precious, a love built on faith, understanding, and the courage to be truly seen. 2 months of careful planning had transformed the Dallas Convention Center into something magical. Soft lighting cast a warm glow across the stage, where the TrueBody logo, a graceful infinity symbol, shimmered against a backdrop of gentle blues and golds. Nia stood backstage, smoothing the silk of her rose-colored dress. The fitted bodice highlighted her curves with elegance, while subtle beading caught the light with every breath. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her microphone. "You look beautiful," whispered her mother, who had flown in from Houston for the event, like a queen. The main hall buzzed with energy. Community leaders, tech journalists, and wellness advocates filled the seats. Even a few former critics had shown up, curious about Mathera's dramatic transformation into TrueBody. Leo paced in his private green room, his recovered strength evident in his steady stride. The past 2 months had changed him. His face carried more color, his eyes brighter with purpose. His navy suit was perfectly tailored, but he'd forgone a tie, choosing instead the approachable polish that had become Truebody's signature style. 5 minutes, Mr. Matthews, called his assistant. The house lights dimmed right on schedule. Leo took the stage to enthusiastic applause, standing tall under the warm spotlights. He smiled, waiting for the crowd to settle. 2 years ago, he began, I thought I knew everything about wellness technology, about helping people live better lives. He paused, his gaze sweeping the audience. I was wrong. The crowd grew quiet, hanging on his words. I had created programs that measured success in numbers, in steps taken, calories burned, metrics achieved. But I had missed the most important measure of all, the courage it takes to simply exist in a world that often tells us we're not enough. His voice grew stronger as he continued. Then I met someone who changed everything. She showed me that taking up space isn't arrogance, it's gratitude. Gratitude for the life we've been given, for the bodies that carry us through our days, for the hearts that allow us to love. In the wings, Nia pressed a hand to her chest, moved by his words. She hadn't seen this part of the speech during rehearsals. This woman taught me that true wellness isn't about shrinking ourselves to fit someone else's ideal. It's about growing into who we're meant to be. Leo's voice softened. She taught me that love, real love, sees beyond surface judgments to the soul beneath. He turned toward the wings. Nia Johnson, would you join me on stage? Surprised, Nia walked out into the spotlight. Her rose dress caught the light perfectly, making her seem to glow from within. Whispers rippled through the audience as they recognized her from the viral champagne incident that had started it all. But before she could reach her usual spot beside the podium, Leo moved to meet her center stage. The look in his eyes made her heart skip. Nia, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the microphone. When we first met, this room was filled with judgment. People laughed, they whispered. They thought they knew our story before it even began. Then, to everyone's amazement, Leo Matthews, the former Virgin CEO, the tech genius, the man who had built an empire, dropped to one knee. The audience gasped collectively as he pulled out a velvet ring box. They said you were too fat to marry. He continued, his voice thick with emotion. I say you were the only one strong enough to teach me what love really is. Tears spilled down Nia's cheeks as he opened the box, revealing a stunning vintage-style ring that caught the stage lights like captured stars. You showed me that purity isn't about isolation, it's about truth. And the truth is, I love every inch of you, your body, your heart, your soul. Leo's own eyes glistened. Nia Johnson, will you marry me? For a moment, time seemed to stop. Then, through happy tears, Nia nodded. Yes, she managed to say. Yes. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause as Leo slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to embrace her. Camera flashes lit up the hall like lightning, capturing the moment when ridicule transformed into redemption. But Nia and Leo barely noticed the chaos around them. They held each other close, their hearts beating in sync, as years of judgment and loneliness melted away in the warmth of their shared triumph. The applause continued, swelling into a standing ovation. In that moment, every cruel comment, every doubtful glance, every whispered criticism was drowned out by the sound of celebration. Celebration not just of their love, but of the truth they had proven. That real beauty, real worth, and real love know no boundaries. The crisp autumn breeze rippled across the lake, carrying the sweet scent of fallen leaves and new beginnings. 6 months had passed since their engagement, and the afternoon sun painted everything in warm, golden hues as Leo and Nia walked hand in hand along the winding park path. Nia's laughter rang out clear and bright as Leo pulled her closer, his strong arm wrapping protectively around her waist. They both moved with an easy grace that came from inner peace rather than external pressure. The changes in their bodies reflected their journey, not from society's demands, but from finding joy in movement and nourishment that celebrated life instead of restricting it. "Oh my gosh, it's really you!" A group of teenage girls approached them, phones clutched excitedly. "Your podcasts helped me so much," one said, her braces glinting as she smiled. "I listen every morning before school. The one about choosing joy changed everything for me," another added shyly. Leo stepped back slightly, watching with quiet pride as Nia connected with her young fans. Her natural warmth drew people in, making each person feel truly seen and heard. After sharing quick hugs and encouragement, they continued their walk until reaching their favorite lakeside bench. Settling down, Leo pulled out a paper bag of duck food they'd brought specifically for these Sunday afternoon visits. Nia scattered some pellets across the water's surface, watching the ducks paddle eagerly toward their offering. "You know what I was thinking," she mused, leaning into Leo's shoulder. "It's funny how everything broken somehow led here. All those moments we thought were dead ends." Leo pressed a gentle kiss to her temple, his voice soft but sure. "Broken things let the light in," he whispered, echoing an ancient truth about beauty being born from imperfection. Children's laughter drifted across the park as families enjoyed the perfect weather. The scene was peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos that had marked the beginning of their story. As they sat together, Nia's latest podcast message seemed to float on the autumn air. Love isn't about fixing each other. It's about staying soft in a world that tells you to harden. The sunlight caught her engagement ring as their fingers remained intertwined, creating tiny rainbows that danced across the glimmering water, a testament to hope, eternal, and love that transcends all boundaries. Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.